What's up, guys? We had a 4-1 day yesterday. That felt good. And including a couple of nice money line underdogs winning outright in the New York Knicks, the Houston Rockets, the Ottawa Senators, and Oregon. Even though Oregon in college basketball, they were not a huge underdog, but still another underdog money line winner. Congratulations to Oregon. They won the Pac-12. They have stolen a bid to the tournament, I believe, because they will be in, and I still think the Colorado is going to get in, but we'll have to see how the bracketology shapes out. They might be sweating it a little bit, but I think they should be in, and I think the run that they made in that conference tournament, I think, is probably going to get them in, despite the bid steals, because NC State had the craziest bid steal, winning a fifth game in 5 days, which is something I'm about to talk about in a minute. In the one game I'm on in college basketball today, NC State, I don't know how they were able to do that, man. How you don't run out of steam playing a fifth game in 5 days, having beaten one of your arch rivals in Duke as a double-digit underdog, and then you face your other arch rival in UNC in the conference final also as a double-digit underdog, and you somehow were able to win that game outright too. I mean, the game mattered more to NC State because North Carolina obviously is going to be in anyway, and that loss might not even prevent them from getting a 1 seed, to be honest, because all the competition for the final 1 seed lost earlier in their conference tournaments, with Tennessee and Arizona both losing earlier in those conference tournaments. So UNC probably is still going to get the final 1 seed. But even so, it was just crazy that NC State was actually able to do that and win that game. They have stolen a bit. So now the bubble is getting really, really rocky. It looks like it's probably going to be a tough time I think Indiana State is going to be absolutely out because of this. Pitt, I didn't even have Pitt in to begin with, so I think they're completely done. Probably this is going to be pretty bad even for Virginia. I think they might not get in at this point. And who else is there? I think this might hurt. Who else did I even have who was who was like right on the edge of the ball? Oh, Indiana State. Oh, no, I mentioned Indiana State. I think Indiana State's absolutely out. And then FAU might actually be out now, which is something I'm going to talk about in a second. They got upset by Temple, like really, as 14-point favorites. That's not going to look good. So even though everybody's saying Florida Atlantic is going to be in, like this is going to be a bid steal in the Conference USA, or not Conference USA, American, sorry, which is what I was also saying, but I was obviously expecting FAU to win yesterday and get into the final. And then at that point, yes, I would say they're in, but they might not even be in at this point. Oh, and Seton Hall was the other team I was thinking about. I think Seton Hall is probably going to be out now because of all these bid steals. This is getting really crazy. So congratulations to those teams, I guess. Congratulations to Long Beach State, champion of the Big West. They got in over UC Davis in a close game last night. Long Beach State, by the way, they're a team that announced we're firing our coach, but he's still coaching in the Big West tournaments. They said, you're fired. You're not coming back. And that seems to have really lit a fire under this team because they did that. He's still coaching. He's just not going to be back next year, I guess. But that somehow propelled them to a win in the Big West tournament, which is insane. The Big East tournament was won by UConn. No surprise there. They are probably going to be the overall number 1 seed. Not much of a change there. They were going to be a 1 seed regardless. Marquette obviously still going to be in the tournament as a high seed. Regardless of that, Marquette without Kolek. We'll see if he comes back for the tournament. What other conferences finished yesterday? I don't even remember. I believe, the WAC was very late at night. The WAC, Grand Canyon, as expected, because they are the best team in that conference. They were able to win over UT Arlington, so they are in. Congratulations to Grand Canyon. And am I missing any? I don't know if I'm missing any. That might be it. Today we have, of course, this is Selection Sunday, so we're down to the final tournament finals here. The Ivy at noon, which is in a couple hours, which is Brown at Yale. Yale down from an 8-point favorite to a 7.5-point favorite. You kind of got to expect Yale's going to win this game. I don't know about the cover, but weird things happen in this Ivy tournament. But Brown took out Princeton yesterday. Princeton, significantly the best team in this conference, made the Sweet 16 last year with a lot of these same guys. They are now out, which is also very unfortunate. Brown was somehow able to take them out after Princeton handled Brown easily both times during the regular season. I don't know how that happened. Princeton just took them very lightly. I think these games are being played. I think that game was being played at Princeton too, but maybe I'm wrong because it says the championship game is being played in New York City. But I don't know. So which might also help Yale, I guess, because they're closer to New York City than Brown is. But Yale is the better of these two teams, so I do expect them to win. Again, I don't know about the cover, but I don't know what happened with Princeton yesterday. Princeton should be the team to get in from the Ivy, but now they will not. The Atlantic 10 finals tomorrow, which this is going to be a bid steal regardless of who wins this game. Duquesne against VCU. This game is being played in Brooklyn, New York. That's where the conference tournament is. You have VCU sitting at only a 2-point favorite with 55% of the tickets, 52% of the cash. So it does look like some market indicators, cash discrepancy kind of indicating towards Duquesne, which is kind of ridiculous. If Duquesne winds up getting through that, VCU of course won that conference tournament last year over Dayton, stole the bid from that conference actually it was a one bid league last year. Never mind. So they knocked Dayton out. I think Dayton went to the NIT and VCU was able to get in. I still think Dayton is going to get into the tournament this year. So I do think this is a bid steal. VCU, the better team, but they're not lined as a very heavy favorite here, man. It looks like the cash discrepancy is against them. I would not be that shocked if Duquesne actually wins that game. Duquesne has been one of the hottest teams in that conference, and they just keep winning, which is crazy. They were able to win yesterday against, I think they won as a small underdog yesterday. Who did they beat yesterday? St. Bonaventure, maybe? I forget. And VCU beat St. Joe's, I believe. A lot of chaos in that conference. In the SEC, you got Florida at Auburn. Auburn's a 5.5-point favorite, actually down to a 5-point favorite, but 59% of the cash on them with 64% of the tickets over the other side on Florida. I like Auburn in that one. Auburn kind of had to escape yesterday against a Mississippi State team who probably did enough to secure a tournament bid for them by beating Tennessee and performing really well in this tournament. Mississippi State had the lead over Auburn for a while, and then they just kind of fell short. So Auburn, I think, maybe coming off a little bit of a scare there and are the better team over Florida. Certainly Auburn, the way better defense over Florida. Florida lacks defensively, certainly. And Auburn has much more balance, but a way better defense for sure. So I like better defense when it comes down to a championship game like this, even though it does mean laying points if you want Auburn. But it looks like this could be a pros versus Joes situation too, because it looks like the public likes the high-scoring offense of Florida more so than they like Auburn, and think this is going to be a competitive game, I guess, so they're going to grab the points with Florida, but I see it differently, obviously. So I do like Auburn in that one, lean to Auburn. Florida was able to beat Alabama 2 games ago, and then who did they beat yesterday? I don't even know who Florida beat yesterday. They beat Texas A&M. Yeah, so Texas A&M is going to have to be sweating it out because they are definitely a bubble team. I think they might have actually gotten knocked out by the bid steals yesterday, too. It's going to be, we'll see what happens with them. They're either going to wind up in Dayton in the first 4 or they're going to wind up out. I think it's very tentative situation for Texas A&M. I'll tweet out my final bracketology at some point before the brackets come out, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Florida, I think Auburn is in the better spot, coming off kind of an escape, where you could say Florida's maybe coming off of an escape as well, though. But I like Auburn, the better defense there. And the Big Ten championship is today with Wisconsin having upset Purdue in overtime. Crazy game there. Wisconsin, I believe, scored right at the end of regulation to tie it, send it into overtime, and then they scored again to take the lead back right near the end of overtime. And then Purdue had to throw up a shot at the buzzer, which did not go in. And Wisconsin was able to knock out Purdue. Purdue's still going to be a 1 seed, almost certainly. And so is Houston, even though, congratulations to Iowa State. They won the Big 12 yesterday. I forgot about that. Absolutely demolishing Houston. I think Houston just didn't show up, man. Houston put up like a historically bad offensive performance in that game. Iowa State, very good defense, but Iowa State clearly was the more motivated team in that one. Houston still going to get a 1 seed regardless. You saw Houston do that last year too, where they didn't have Sasser in their final in the American last year when they were there, and they lost to Memphis. But I think Houston, they just don't care as much about winning those conference tournaments. I would say Iowa State able to get there. Congratulations to them. Iowa State probably is going to be a 2 seed in the tournament. Both of those teams very good defensively, but Big Ten, back to that. Yes, Wisconsin pulled off that big win over Purdue. Purdue still will be a 1 seed. Wisconsin maybe moving themselves back up to maybe the 5 line or something with a nice run in this tournament. This is in Minneapolis. The SEC game is in Nashville, Tennessee, by the way, which is also closer to Auburn than it is to Florida. So maybe some more home crowd there for Auburn. We'll see, because Florida fans are pretty rabid as well. So I don't know. Wisconsin, Illinois here, though, and Illinois was able to win yesterday. I like Illinois in this one because Illinois, Wisconsin pulled off a huge win as an underdog, a big upset, and obviously both of these teams are going to be in the tournament. Illinois probably on the 3 or 4 line. Illinois, they had a scare yesterday, man. They were losing by a lot to Nebraska in that game, and Illinois somehow came on big near the end and wound up winning by, I think, double digits, which is not indicative of what was going on in that game. They were losing most of that game. It looked like they were going to lose to Nebraska pretty late in that game, and then all of a sudden, holy crap, they raced like a 15-point second-half deficit and wound up winning by double digits. Huge turnaround from an Illinois team that certainly could score a lot, but their defense is not good. We'll see what happens against Wisconsin, though, because Wisconsin really likes to slow the pace down, though, and plays defense better than Illinois does. And Wisconsin catching points, but Illinois up from 3 to 3.5 with 71% of the cash, 68% of tickets. I do kind of lean to Illinois in that one just because they are the better team and they had that escape. But Wisconsin, the slower team, better defense, getting points. I'm not totally sure about that. The game I'm going to be on, though, is going to be to lay the points with UAB. Laying -6.5, although it looks like you might have to lay 7 now. Not that much of a difference, although 7 is kind of a key number in college basketball, because it's a 3-possession game where you might stop intentionally fouling, but maybe not that much of a difference. It was 6.5 just a little while ago at some spots. Maybe it still is. UAB looking like they're around a 7-point favorite. They got 71% of the cash, 68% of the tickets. So they do have the cash discrepancy, even though they are public. I like UAB in this one, man. Even though this should have been the case with NC State yesterday, playing a 5th game in 5 days, having pulled off a ridiculous upset and then winning again the next day in overtime. I don't know how NC State had enough left in the tank to do what they did last night. I don't expect it to be the same deal for Temple here. Temple, they are really not a good team, man. I don't know what's been going on with them making this run after they had those weird cheating accusations during the season. Now they're making this run and they're not a very good team, really not good offensively. It's just kind of bizarre. UAB is the better offensive team. UAB is just the better overall team, really. They're the team that has more size. I believe they're the more physical team. So I just don't see how Temple is going to be able to do this, even though I actually think Temple is the better defensive team slightly. I think neither of these teams are good defensively, and Temple plays a bit slower than UAB does and plays better defense, but I think they're just so significantly worse than UAB is that I don't see that they're going to be able to control the tempo here. UAB might be able to control the tempo. Who knows? This game is in Fort Worth, Texas, so it's actually kind of closer to UAB than to Temple. Temple, a Philly team. UAB is a Southern team, of course, and the game's being played in the South. UAB, yeah, I like a lot of aspects of this. Temple, they're playing a 5th game in 5 days, man, and they just pulled off an upset over FAU yesterday, even though obviously Temple needs to win this game to get into the tournament, and they didn't expect to be here, so it's kind of like they're playing with house money, like I said with Oregon yesterday, but that was a close matchup in the Oregon game, and that was winnable. I think this game, and Oregon had played the same number of days in a row as Colorado did. This is a situation where Temple is playing a 5th game in 5 days, whereas UAB is only playing a 3rd game in this tournament in 3 days. So UAB had 2 additional rounds off in this tournament compared to what Temple had, because Temple had to play the first day of this tournament. So really, what are they going to have left? And in the prior game last night, they somehow pulled off that 14.5-point upset or whatever it was over FAU. Absolutely crazy. I don't see what Temple's going to have left here. UAB laying 7, I think, is a cheap price here because they are the better team, especially offensively, but also the much better rebounding team. And UAB, they were laying 7.5 on the road at Temple during the regular season. The one time these teams face each other, not that long ago, they were laying 7.5 in Temple, and now they're only laying 7 in a neutral. It seems like that's an overreaction to what's been going on with these teams recently. I don't see how you're getting that much of a benefit in the number, although it does mean that UAB is public, but that's quite the shift there because you think Temple gets probably about 3 points for home court. So it seems like this line should be closer to even 10 or something like that, even though KenPom actually, I think, only has this line at around 6 or so, but I don't know if I'm buying that. So I think the 7 is still a bargain here. It's cheap. And with the spot the Temple is in, just having played so many games in a row and having won all of them as an underdog, except for the first one, I think, against UTSA. No, UTSA was actually a favorite in that one too. And so Yeah, so Temple has been an underdog in every one of these games, and now they're an underdog against you. You're asking them to now to now win a fifth straight game as an underdog. I mean, it's easier to do it when you've already won 4 of the games already as an underdog, but still, they've been pulling off all these wins as underdogs. How can that continue, man? Against SMU, Charlotte, and FAU. SMU and FAU probably the top 2 teams in the conference power ratings wise. Charlotte also one of the better teams in the conference as well. Now you're running into UAB, who's actually one of the better teams in the conference as well. Maybe not as good as those other few teams, but not a bad team. Certainly better than Temple is. So I like UAB. And if you look at the box score of that first game, UAB demolished Temple on the road. Obviously they easily covered at Temple. And yes, UAB shot absolutely out of their minds in that game against Temple, which I don't think that's going to happen again. 100-72 was the final there. UAB is certainly the team that can score way more than Temple can. UAB shot 60.7% from the field and 55.6% from 3. That's not going to happen again. But look at the other elements of the box score here, where UAB had 61 field goal attempts to Temple's 50. So they had 11 more field goal attempts. They did actually have fewer 3-point attempts. They were exactly the same in free throws, but they also won the rebound battle 41-19. They had 22 assists to Temple's 9. So that tells you that UAB's offense was clicking a lot more. They had way more field goal attempts. They had way more assists, and it tells you they absolutely crushed Temple on the boards. 41-19. That's just an annihilation. Like, even though UAB did also shoot like an unrealistic percentage, Temple didn't shoot that badly in the game themselves, really. 48% from the field and 38.1% from 3. So not actually terrible for Temple. Maybe that's a little bit high for like a Temple game because their offense isn't really that good. So I do expect some regression as far as the percentages are concerned on the UAB side, but UAB just dominated that game in every possible way that you look at the box right there. Was total domination from UAB, and I just don't know if Temple's going to have enough to completely overcome a team that's just obviously way better than they are in so many phases of the game. I like UAB here, and with the rest situation being very much in favor of UAB as well, I like UAB. I'm going to lay the points, -6.5, or I guess it's 7 now. It does look like they do have the cash discrepancy despite being public, so hopefully that is an indicator that might be the correct side in that one. We can hope. Moving over, I'm skipping the entire NHL card, by the way. I'll mention that. There's nothing that really registers with me in the NHL. A lot of these teams in the NHL played yesterday. There were kind of a lot of big favorites today that I don't really want to get involved in this NHL card, so I'm skipping it. Going to the NBA, I got one play in the NBA, which is kind of a weird situation. Yeah, I will point out the Heat Pistons are in a zigzag, with the Heat having laid 8.5 in the previous game, which was also Heat at Pistons, and the Heat, I believe, won and covered the game. They're down to a 6.5 point favorite in this one. I don't know if the Heat are resting anybody or what's going on there, but it is a zigzag spot where Pistons will probably be the team that has the adjustments to make. So I do kind of lean to the Pistons there just for the zigzag, but I don't think that alone is strong enough to want to get involved in a game. You got a lot of teams that maybe not in the best spots, but are kind of laying like huge prices. So I don't want to get involved in any of those either. Suns Bucks is probably a big game. The Bucks are down from 3 to a 2-point favorite with juice, with 73% of tickets on them, but 91% of cash over on the other side on Phoenix. So the market indicators look like they're on Phoenix. I do kind of lean to the Phoenix side in this one. Milwaukee coming off kind of a decent win over the 76ers, and they have the Celtics up next. But it's not for 3 days. But those are both Eastern Conference games. So those are a little bit bigger than this game against the Phoenix Suns. And the Phoenix Suns, I believe, are coming off some easier game. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they played the Hornets. Unfortunately, I lost by like 1 point on my play on the Hornets in that game 2 days ago. So Phoenix, they are finishing a road trip, though, playing a 4th straight road game. So I don't know about that. But I do think Phoenix is in a little bit of a better spot because they had an easier game in their prior game, whereas Milwaukee had that. I think I lost money in both of these teams' previous games by 1 point in each of those games. Milwaukee wound up covering against the 76ers after having lost all game. But does that mean Milwaukee's coming off a scare? Or do they put in a lot of effort to come back against a 76ers team that's still not really that bad? I don't know. So that one's hard to gauge. The game I'm actually going to be on is a weird situation here where I'm going to play the San Antonio Spurs. They're up from 1.5 to 2 now, and it looks like they have 83% of the tickets, 95% of the cash. So somehow they're public. I don't know if I buy that they're public because they're playing the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets have the way better record. So I don't see how the Spurs would actually be the public side here, but it does look like they have more of the cash than the tickets, which I like, and the line is moving up on them, which I also like. I got in on this on the Spurs 1.5. There's not that much of a difference between 1.5 and 2 here, but I like the spot here for the Spurs a lot better than Brooklyn. Brooklyn's on a back-to-back. They did just lose yesterday against the Pacers, but that's kind of a tough game. This is a weird travel spot, really, because Brooklyn played 5 games in a row on the road coming into this game against mostly easier opponents for the most part, but they lost 4 out of 5 of those, so they haven't been performing well. They lost at Detroit, at Charlotte, won at Cleveland somehow, and then lost at Orlando, who's a bit of a better team, and then lost at Indiana last night. Indiana's a little bit better too, but now they're playing a back-to-back in 2 different cities, not playing a third game in 4 days because they did have 2 days off going into the Orlando game, but still, it's a back-to-back. It's a 6th straight game in a different city because this game is actually being played in Austin, Texas. I don't know what's going on in Austin, Texas, but Brooklyn is now having to travel from Indianapolis into Austin with no time off, playing yet another road game. And they do have New Orleans up next and Milwaukee and then New York. So 3 games against better opponents coming up next. Although, I don't know, can they afford to overlook a team when they haven't been playing well? Maybe not, but this is just such a ridiculous travel and rest spot for them that I just don't see what they're really going to have here against San Antonio, playing so many games in different cities in this recent stretch and having maybe a game that they might be looking ahead to up next. Don't really know that they're going to be fully focused on San Antonio. San Antonio, I think, has reason to be more focused here. They actually have a day off, and they're staying in Austin, and they've been in the state of Texas for now. This is going to be their 4th straight game that's in Texas and almost essentially a home game. They played an actual home game against Houston. Then I believe they played against Denver. Or excuse me, they played actual home games against Golden State and Houston and lost both those games. But they were kind of competitive in both those games. They'd beaten Golden State the game prior to that. And they have a decent rest spot here, too, because they actually had 2 days off before playing Denver in Austin. I don't know what's going on in Austin, if this is a tournament or what, but they played Denver. They actually played kind of decently, but they still were losing the whole game. So I don't know if I would say it was like a full effort. I mean, they were getting blown out for a lot of it. They didn't quite go away, but they still lost by double digits in the game. But the crowd in that game was a pretty home-heavy crowd for San Antonio. In Austin, Texas, it's like a semi-home environment for San Antonio. I think the place was actually kind of packed. I think they're drawing a lot of fans in Austin. These fans are coming out because I think for that one, they wanted to see the returning champs as well, but they were rooting for San Antonio. But they might have a nice draw on this one, too, just because these fans want to see San Antonio. They want to see Wemba. They want to see him play. I mean, he is one of the talks of the NBA. He's probably shoo-in for Rookie of the Year, I would have to say. They want to see this guy play, but the spot is just so much better for San Antonio travel-wise. They played 2 games at home in San Antonio, lost both of them, and then they lost in the first Austin game to the returning champs, put up an okay performance, but this is the second of the 2 games they play in Austin. They played 2 games in Austin here, and then they still actually continue to play at home. They play against Dallas next. So I think they're going to want to split these games in Austin, man. I think they're going to want to get a win out of these 2 Austin games, and this is certainly a winnable game. They're actually the favorite in this one with Brooklyn coming in. So I do think they have reason to be focused on this. Because Brooklyn's focus, I think, might be a little questionable. So I like the San Antonio Spurs, man. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. They've lost 5 of their last 6. But they haven't been playing that poorly, like I said, in that stretch. So I like San Antonio. I think they're going to be pumped to try to get a win here in this weird Austin series, whatever it is. And they have the day off, whereas the Brooklyn Nets do not. And Brooklyn has been, like I said, on the road for – this is going to be a 6th straight game basically on the road for them in 6 different cities that are not in their homes. So very bad spot for Brooklyn, I would have to say, where San Antonio, like I said, they're just staying in the state of Texas, and they've already been in Austin for a game, which also means they've already played a game in this venue. So they're already familiar with this venue, whereas Brooklyn is not. And Brooklyn's having to come into this game into an unfamiliar venue with no time off. So they're not even really going to have time to start like preparing for this one and really get like adjusted to the venue, or San Antonio has been there for a couple days and they already played a game in this venue. So they're already familiar with like the sight lines and whatever, kind of like in these college tournaments or a team that plays that first game in that unfamiliar venue already gets adjusted to that venue. So I like the spot for San Antonio a lot here. I think they have a lot of advantages here in this game. So San Antonio Spurs will be that play. And that's it for me today, man. Let's enjoy Selection Sunday and we'll see what happens with the craziness with the remaining conference finals here and what happens with the brackets. I think the bracket is almost pretty much set here. I don't think it's not going to be affected that much by the outcomes of today's games. The games are going to have some auto bids get in, and then I think in all the big conferences that are playing today, every team that's playing in the big conferences is already into the tournament, and then the losers of the mid-major conferences that are playing today are going to be out of the tournament, so no more bid steals. So we'll see what happens. Still be some craziness, and we'll see what happens with the bracket selection show. Peace out, man. One more time, my 2 plays today are UAB -6.5, or you might have to lay 7 at this point. I apologize for that. And San Antonio Spurs -1.5 in the NBA. Peace.